today's life, people tend to think that the fatigue they bear comes from work pressure, from making a living, and from the myriad worries piled up in society. However, if we sit still for a moment, we will realize that before the body even gets tired, the mind has already run wild. It is the mind filled with too many thoughts that makes our breath short, our eyes heavy, and our steps weary. The Buddha taught that the mind leads all phenomena. When the mind is at peace, life is at peace. When the mind is agitated, all things become chaotic. People today constantly chase after things that do not belong to them, thus losing themselves. Because they lose themselves, suffering follows, like waves beating against a sandy shore, never ceasing. If, at this very moment, listeners were to gently close their eyes, relax their shoulders, and allow their breath to slow down, they would feel a stream of water still flowing deep within themselves. That stream is the inner self. An inner self stirred by sorrow, craving, or anger is like a glass of water that has been muddied. The more it's stirred, the murkier it becomes. The more it moves, the less clearly one can see. To clear that glass of water, there is only one way: set it down and let the sediment settle. Similarly, a mind full of thoughts only finds peace when we stop, look within ourselves, and allow these restless thoughts to settle with a gentle breath. A student of Buddhism is not someone who merely reads sutras or recites chants while neglecting to observe their inner self. Many people have been vegetarian for decades, yet their afflictions remain abundant. Every time things don't go their way, they become angry, yell, and further darken their own minds. In the scriptures, the Buddha always reminded that practicing abstinence and observing precepts without cultivating the mind, without patience, without understanding oneself, is like holding a beautiful perfume bottle filled with dirt. That water cannot be seen clearly, because one has only looked at the outside and presumed oneself to be pure. A true practitioner must be like the earth, which knows how to embrace, like water, which knows how to filter, like fire, which knows how to burn away impurities, and like wind, which knows how to blow away all foul odors without holding on to anything. When the mind is expansive like the earth, cool like water, bright like fire, and light like wind, there is nothing that can cause us lasting affliction. When the mind thinks less, the body suffers less. When the mind clings less, life is less arduous. Long ago, when the Buddha taught Rahula to practice patience, he said, "Observe your body as if it were the earth. Whether people scatter fragrant flowers upon it or throw dirt onto it, the earth accepts everything without joy or disgust. Learn the conduct of water, for water is tolerant, flowing, dissolving things, whether fragrant or foul, without anger or aversion. Learn the conduct of fire, for fire burns everything, but does not cling to what it burns. Learn the conduct of the air, for air passes through countless scents, but retains none. When the mind learns to emulate these virtues, thoughts naturally diminish. Just as light naturally penetrates a forest when dense vegetation clears, so too will peace naturally find us when our mind is less agitated." Someone once asked, "Why do I suffer endlessly?" The answer lies in every thought they cling to daily. The more the mind thinks, the more it is dragged by delusive thoughts. The more delusive thoughts, the thicker the karmic forces. The thicker the karmic forces, the tighter cause and effect bind, making life heavier. The Buddha once said, "A practitioner who does not cultivate patience does not know how to let go, and does not reflect on themselves, even after 100 years of practice, will not escape the chains of mental formations." Therefore, to experience true peace, listeners must start with their own minds. In the long journey ahead, consisting of 14 parts, we will together go through each step to understand why the mind is restless, learn how to let go properly, cultivate the 4 immeasurable minds: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. Recognize karma in every thought, and practice mindfulness to reflect on life. Each part will be like a lamp, illuminating the path of practice, guiding listeners from the shore of unease to the haven of peace. If this makes your mind settle even a little, that is a sign of homecoming. When the mind knows how to return, all suffering thoughts can be transformed. And from here, the journey to peace will begin. When people enter the busy life of the present age, what exhausts them most is not the work piled up on their desks, nor the honking of dense traffic, nor the high-pressure conversations in meetings. What exhausts them most is the endless stream of thoughts in their minds. A person can sit still for an entire session without their body moving, yet their mind races like a wild horse, galloping endlessly from one thing to another, from past to future, from one worry to another fear. The Buddha taught that suffering does not arise from events, but from our thoughts about events. When listeners contemplate this statement deeply, they will find it to be as true as light illuminating the darkest night. For the same event, some people remain calm, while others experience extreme anxiety. For the same words spoken, some can let them go, while others hold on to them for years. So, where does the cause of suffering lie? It lies in every stream of thought we cling to daily. Those who think too much often live in the shadow of the past or in the illusion of the future. The past is over, yet they rehash every detail to torment themselves. The future has not arrived, yet they weave countless scenarios that cause themselves to tremble with fear. Where the mind clings, there the mind suffers. Clinging to painful memories amplifies the pain. Clinging to old wounds widens the hurt. Clinging to what hasn't happened yet fills the entire day with anxiety. Therefore, the more one thinks, the more tired one becomes. This is because the mind is like a person carrying a heavy bag, even if that bag contains only things they have imagined. For those with a heavy mind, their heart feels trapped between the two doors of past and future, leaving no room for gentle breaths or the simple joys of the present. In Buddhist teachings, the functioning of emotions is described through the cycle of mind, contact, feeling, perception, and formation. When the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind come into contact with something, pleasant or unpleasant feelings immediately arise. From these feelings, thoughts appear, and based on them, we begin to act or react. Although it may be a very small contact, if the mind lacks mindfulness, it will be exaggerated into an extremely serious matter. If someone says something slightly harsh or insensitive to us, if we know how to observe, we would simply regard it as a sound passing through our ears. But if we don't know how to observe, we will hold on to it, and the mind will begin to interpret. From a single statement made by another, the mind creates dozens of subsequent statements and believes that those things will certainly happen. This is the nature of suffering, self-thinking. Preachers often say that an uncultivated mind is like a wheel rolling on a muddy road. The more it spins, the more mud it collects. The more mud it collects, the deeper the wheel sinks. For those who don't know how to turn inward and observe, even a slight feeling of sadness is enough to destabilize the mind. A small criticism can cause self-importance to flare up, and a minor issue can be exaggerated into a heavy burden. Therefore, the scriptures frequently mention ignorance, avijja, and ego-clinging, atagraha. Ignorance means not seeing the true nature of reality. Ego-clinging means overemphasizing one's self. When these two combine, the mind is like a cow being herded into a slaughterhouse. It just runs wildly out of fear, unaware that its fear is meaningless. Many times in life, we ourselves herd ourselves into the dark corners of our thoughts, without knowing that we are creating our own suffering. To help listeners understand this better, let's look at a very relatable story. It's about a woman named Han, a gentle, diligent, and careful office worker. One morning, while drafting a document, she received a short message from her boss. "Meet to discuss this afternoon." That was all. No further details. No reason given. Because of its brevity, her mind began to stir. She asked herself, "Did I just make a mistake? Was yesterday's report unsatisfactory?" She thought about possibly being reprimanded. She thought even further, considering that she might even be fired. These thoughts appeared faster than her breath, quickly turning into a storm in her heart. All morning, even though she sat in front of the computer, she couldn't concentrate. Each tap of the keyboard, usually normal, felt heavy. Her eyes stared at the screen, but her mind raced into the dark corners of the future. Lunch was no longer appetizing, as anxiety weighed heavily on her chest, a vague fear magnifying into an obsession. When afternoon came, she walked into the meeting room with a nervous feeling, like someone awaiting a verdict. But when her boss entered, what she heard was not scolding or criticism. The boss simply said she had done an excellent job on the recent project, and the company wanted to reward her. At the same time, the boss asked for her assistance in a few other departments, trusting her capabilities. Ms. Han was stunned. All the suffering she had experienced since morning did not come from the event itself. It all came from her own thoughts. This is a classic example of the mind's amplification cycle. The event was like a light leaf falling onto the water, but an anxious mind turned that leaf into a rock, creating countless ripples. If the mind is stable, a leaf is just a leaf. If the mind is unstable, a leaf becomes a storm. That is why the Buddha taught that suffering does not come from events, but from the mind thinking about events. A person who knows how to turn inward and observe their mind will understand that worries fall into two categories. One is useful worry, which helps us prepare and live cautiously. The other is useless worry, which exhausts us without solving anything. People who think a lot often choose the second type, because their minds are not clear enough to distinguish. In the teachings, there is a saying that one cannot win every argument, but one can win over oneself. Winning over others only brings a little self-satisfaction. But winning over an agitated mind brings true freedom. External victories are fleeting, but internal victory is the root of happiness. Therefore, practitioners do not learn to fight against life, but to deal with their inner self. When the inner self is expansive and gentle, all external changes become lessons, no longer threats. To delve deeper into the root of suffering caused by thoughts, we must look at how the mind operates, similar to the elements of earth, water, fire, and wind. When the mind is angry, it's like fire. Just a tiny spark can ignite it and burn away all peace. The more the fire burns, the more it makes people lose their clarity. When the mind is sensitive, easily hurt, it's like a thin, fragile glass pane. Just a light touch can immediately crack it. When the mind is stubborn, it's like a pine tree nailed to the ground. The deeper the nail goes, the more the tree hurts. The more stubborn a person clings to their opinions, the more they suffer. When the mind is sad, it's like a gloomy sky pulling gray clouds, and one only sees heaviness, forgetting that behind the clouds there is light. If the listener contemplates deeply, they will realize that the human mind also has the ability to purify itself, just like the four elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. Earth embraces without distinguishing between clean and dirty. Water washes away all dust and dirt, but retains no smell or taste. Fire burns and consumes everything, but leaves no trace. Wind blows through countless smells, but clings to none. When the mind practices according to the earth, water, fire, and wind, thoughts will gradually lighten. A mind that learns from the earth knows how to be tolerant of others' unpleasant words. A mind that learns from water knows how to let go of petty annoyances. A mind that learns from fire knows how to burn away negative, delusive thoughts. A mind that learns from the wind knows how to let all sorrows fly away. If the mind knows how to act according to these four virtues, no event can create excessive worry anymore. During the time of the Buddha, there was a monk who was constantly agitated by excessive thinking. Every morning, he would wake up worrying about the evening. Every evening, he would worry about the next day. His mind was always filled with unnecessary questions. This monk often suffered from headaches, insomnia, and a heavy heart because of things that had not yet happened. He came to the Buddha and asked why his mind kept creating fear. The Buddha gently taught him, "Your mind is like a monkey, swinging continuously from branch to branch, from one place to another. Each time it jumps, you lose your stability. You must learn to stop it with your breath, with mindfulness. If you let your mind exaggerate a small matter into a large one, you will walk in darkness, imagining you are on a bright path." The monk asked the Buddha, "How can the mind stop being restless?" The Buddha replied, "Look at the mind as you look at water bubbles. Bubbles sometimes appear, sometimes dissipate. They are neither permanent nor substantial. Thoughts are the same. No thought is real. No thought is fixed. If you believe in them too much, you will suffer because of them. If you see them arise and cease like a wisp of cloud, you will not cling to them. When you do not cling, the mind will naturally find peace." In the Lotus Sutra, There is a passage that teaches that one who knows how to contemplate, even amidst a life full of changes, remains serene, like a person standing on the shore, watching a flowing river. The river may flow swiftly, but the person on the shore is not swept away. One who knows how to observe the mind still perceives emotions, but is not controlled by them. Such a person is not carried away by circumstances like a leaf floating in the current. Instead, they are like a pine tree standing firm in the wind. No matter how strong the wind blows, the tree remains rooted. When we are tormented by thoughts, the first thing to do is not to try to eliminate them. The more we try to eliminate them, the stronger they become. What needs to be done is to look at the thought as we look at a crying child. Don't hit, don't scold, just embrace it and breathe with it. When we look at a thought with loving kindness, it will naturally soothe itself. When we look with compassion, it dissolves faster. When we look with sympathetic joy, we realize that no thought needs to make us afraid. When we look with equanimity, we allow the thought to pass without holding on to it. This is the application of the 4 immeasurable minds in dealing with the storms within us. To achieve this, listeners need to train their minds with a new habit. Whenever a negative thought arises, ask 3 questions. The first question is this truly happening right now? The second question is this beneficial for my present moment? The third question is this just my imagination? When these 3 questions are answered, the mind will naturally detach from the anxiety and return to a state of peace. This is a simple yet very effective method for those who often worry excessively. After all the analysis above, the lesson listeners need to remember is that suffering does not come from events. Suffering comes from the mind exaggerating events. To lessen suffering, one must know how to turn inward, observe the mind, and let go of unnecessary thoughts. When the mind is calm, a small matter remains small. When the mind is agitated, a small matter becomes a high mountain. Therefore, if one wishes to live peacefully, one does not need to win every argument, nor prove oneself right in every situation. One only needs to conquer oneself, to conquer the streams of thoughts that pull one away from the present. When one conquers oneself, one opens the door to freedom. When that door is opened, life becomes light, as a cool breeze after a rain, fresh as a newly bloomed lotus, and peaceful as the sound of a temple bell in the early morning. There are times in life when we feel we are carrying an invisible burden that no one can see. This burden is not on our shoulders or back, but deep within our mind. We cannot hold it, nor can we put it down, yet we clearly feel it draining our energy. Many people say they suffer not because of others, but because of themselves, constantly clinging to unnecessary things. A loved one says something, and we hold on to it for a whole week. Today, someone criticizes us lightly, and it haunts us for an entire month. A small failure, and we remember it for years. The more we think, the more tired we become. The more we try to prove something, the more our mind feels bound. Therefore, when we embark on the journey of understanding the mind and healing ourselves, we must learn an important art that the Buddha taught many times: the art of letting go. Letting go is not about ceasing to do anything, nor is it about abandonment or escape. Letting go is a maturation of wisdom. A person who knows how to let go is not weak. but one who has seen the true nature of all things and understands that clinging is the very source of suffering. In the scriptures, there is a saying, to hold something. Your hand must be empty. If the mind wishes to contain peace, it must first release heavy things. Thus, when speaking of letting go, the Buddha used many images to help people see that nothing in life is worth clinging to the point of losing one's own peace. One of the deepest and most profound teachings is the conduct of the earth. The Buddha said that if the mind wishes to be at peace, it must learn to be like the earth. If people scatter fragrant flowers on the earth does not rejoice. If people throw dirty garbage on the earth does not get angry. The earth simply embraces everything silently and transforms them according to the laws of nature. If someone praises, the earth receives. If someone criticizes, the earth also receives. But the earth does not react to anything, because the earth knows that everything belongs to the nature of impermanence. There is coming and going, arising and ceasing. Humans often suffer because their minds are not like the earth. If someone praises, the mind rejoices excessively. If someone criticizes, the mind grieves excessively. A good word, we cherish it to the point of self-satisfaction. A bad word, we hold on to it like a knife cutting into our heart. In contrast, the wise person sees that both praise and criticism are merely sounds passing through the ear, with no real value to bind the mind. The mind allows everything to pass, just like the earth allows rain and sun to pass without reacting. The teaching on the conduct of the earth was also given by the Buddha to Rahula, who was young but made mistakes many times because his mind was still undeveloped. One time, the Buddha called Rahula and taught him that when practicing, he should observe his body as if it were the earth. If anyone digs, throws trash, lights a fire, or pours water, the earth does not cling, does not react, does not harbor resentment. Rahula bowed his head after hearing this, but the Buddha did not stop there and continued to expand the lesson. He said that the body should also be observed like water, like fire, like wind. Water washes away all impurities, fire burns away all impurities, and wind blows through both fragrant and foul smells, without carrying anything. Contemplate in this way to see that your mind can contact external objects, but does not cling to them. Just as the wind passes through flower beds or garbage dumps without retaining any scent, a practitioner who knows how to practice will not allow praise or criticism to leave a trace in their heart. Upon hearing this teaching, Rahula felt as if a door had opened, leading him to freedom. One who makes a mistake corrects it. One who commits a fault acknowledges it. But most importantly, the mind must maintain the stillness of the earth, the tolerance of water, the brightness of fire, and the freedom of wind. The Buddha taught this not only for Rahula to mature, but for all of us, living amidst this turbulent life, to learn the art of letting go so that our minds are no longer swept away by every gust of worldly words. This is because when the mind cannot let go, suffering arises from the mind itself. Someone's words cannot harm us if we do not take them to heart. A sad event cannot linger if we know how to put it down. But most people live in the habit of holding on rather than releasing. That is why we are angry, because we cling to anger. We are sad because we hold on to sadness. We suffer because we refuse to let go of old things. Someone once asked, Why do I suffer so much from a single word spoken by another? The Buddha replied, that word does not cause you suffering. It is your own mind stubbornly clinging to that word that causes you harm. Therefore, to end suffering, you must learn to put things down. If your hand is holding something heavy, you cannot pick up something lighter unless you let go. In everyday life, there is a simple story that holds deep meaning about the art of letting go. People often tell of Mr. Lam, a car mechanic who spent more than half his life tightening bolts and fixing engines. He was a gentleman, but easily offended. If anyone spoke harshly, he felt turmoil in his heart. One day, a customer brought his car for repair. After inspection, Mr. Lam said the car needed a few parts replaced because they were too old. The customer bristled, accusing him of fabricating issues to charge more. The customer even uttered a few insulting remarks, which made Mr. Lam's face flush with anger. He was about to retort loudly when he suddenly saw the basin of water next to him, used for washing hands. A young boy had just scooped water to wash a stove and stirred it vigorously, making the water in the basin muddy. Mr. Lam paused. He said nothing more, but placed the basin on the ground and left it alone. A moment later, the dirt settled, and the water became clear again, as it was initially. He looked at the basin of water, then at himself. Suddenly, he understood that his mind was like that basin of water. Whenever something affected him, he stirred it up, making his mind murky and unable to see things clearly. If he had let his mind settle a bit, like the water, perhaps he wouldn't have suffered from those words. From that day on, he resolved that whenever someone said something that angered him, he would not react immediately, but let his mind settle. One day, another customer complained that he was slow. He remembered the basin of water and simply remained silent, smiling. He realized that silence was not defeat, but a victory over himself, because only when the mind settles can we clearly see what is worth reacting to and what should be let go. The lesson from that basin of water changed Mr. Lam's entire life. He became calmer, less prone to taking offense, and suffered less. His son recounted that in the past, his father used to frown every time he encountered a difficult customer, but now he just smiles and regards everything like wind blowing through the eaves. Whatever people say does not disturb his mind. People praised his skill, and he remained calm. People complained, and he remained calm. His mind was always like still, clear water, reflecting everything without distortion. That story reminds us that letting go is not abandoning life, but letting go of the habit of overreacting. To let go is to let the mind become free. When the mind is no longer pulled by praise or criticism, by gains or losses, we truly live in peace. The Buddha once asked his disciples, "When the wind blows through a bamboo forest, the bamboo makes a sound. So, what makes the bamboo make a sound?" Some said it was the wind. Others said it was the bamboo. The Buddha smiled and explained that the sound arises because the bamboo and the wind interact. If the bamboo is soft and bends with the wind will not break the bamboo and will not make it creak. The human mind is the same. When we become gentle and flexible in the face of life's storms, we will not be harmed by tempests. The practices of earth, water, fire, and wind are all meant to help us see that each element is a method of letting go. Earth teaches us patience. Water teaches us the ability to wash away impurities. Fire teaches us to burn away unnecessary afflictions. Wind teaches us to interact without clinging. If someone accidentally offends us, learn the conduct of wind, so that the words pass through without being held onto. If you encounter difficulties, learn the conduct of water, to let it flow away instead of stagnating. If the mind holds on to afflictions for a long time, learn the conduct of fire, to burn away those sorrows with wisdom and understanding. If you encounter changes in life, learn the conduct of earth, to stand firm without wavering. When we understand this spirit, we will know how to put down our burdens. Letting go is not a one-day affair, but a whole process of training. In this process, we must learn to observe our own minds. When a wave of anger arises in the mind, we recognize it instead of chasing after it. When sadness arises, we take a deep breath to return to the body. The body is like a mountain, the breath like a clear stream, the mind like the rising sun. If we just stop for a moment, release our breath a little, the mind will immediately settle. The ancients taught, when angry, don't speak. When sad, don't decide. When tired, don't argue. This is not just folk wisdom, but a method for cultivating the mind. Whenever emotions surge, the mind is like muddy water, unable to see anything clearly. If we try to make decisions at that moment, we only create more confusion. When we take a step back, maintain a gentle breath, and let the mind settle, wisdom will appear. Wisdom does not come when the mind is turbulent. Wisdom only comes when the mind is at peace. A simple practice is that whenever something bothers us, we place our hand on our chest and breathe in deeply. We silently tell ourselves that we are breathing in. When we breathe out, we silently tell ourselves that we are breathing out. By being aware of our breath, we bring our mind back to the present and are no longer swept away by thoughts. Another practice is to spend a few minutes each night before sleep reflecting on the day that has passed. We recall what we worried about today, whom we were angry with, or what made us sad. We ask ourselves if it is worth carrying that into tomorrow. If it's not worth it, we put it down. We tell ourselves that our mind deserves more peace than that. Many people often confuse letting go with defeat. But as the Buddha taught, the true victor is not one who defeats others, but one who conquers oneself. A person who knows how to let go is not someone who is overpowered by others, but one who has seen through the nature of all disputes and is no longer swayed by them. The one who clings is the one who suffers. The one who lets go is the one who is free. It's like holding a heavy stone. If we keep clenching it, our hand gets tired. When we put it down, we immediately feel lighter. Suffering is also like that stone. Only when we put it down can we move forward. Everyone in life has experienced loss, heard unpleasant words, been misunderstood or criticized. If we gather all of that into our hearts, our minds will be full of sorrow. But if we let these things pass like the wind, they will not harm us. Someone once asked, "Why do some people in life live so calmly, despite facing many storms?" The Buddha replied, "Because they know how to let go at the right time. Those who suffer are the ones who cling to everything, believing they must be right and others must be wrong. The more they cling, the heavier they become. The heavier they become, the more they suffer. Therefore, to live peacefully and happily, we must learn to let go little by little. Let go of old things. Let go of things that cannot be changed. Let go of words that hurt us. Let go of thoughts that keep us from sleeping. Let go a little today. Let go a little more tomorrow. And there will come a day when our mind is so light that even a gentle breeze will be enough to make our heart smile. Looking back at the story of Mr. Lamb and the muddy water basin, we understand that by simply letting the mind settle a bit, life will brighten. Looking back at the Buddha's teachings to Rahula, we understand that this body must be observed like earth, water, fire, and wind, to face life without being disturbed. Looking back at ourselves, we understand that what causes us suffering is not external events, but the way our mind perceives them. When the mind knows how to let go, we will see that there are few things truly worth worrying about. The last thing I want to share with you is a gentle reminder. Letting go does not make you weak. It helps you become free. You don't need to win every argument. You only need to conquer yourself. When you conquer your temper, conquer your stubbornness, conquer your ego that desires to win or lose, you have stepped onto the path of peace that the Buddha once taught. Letting go is the gateway to happiness, and one who knows how to let go is the one with the most solid foundation of wisdom in this life. There are times in life when we feel that just an unintentional remark from someone is enough to stir up our hearts, like a stone thrown into a calm lake. Sometimes, just an unfriendly glance from a stranger at an intersection can bother us all day. And then there are times when a reproach from a loved one makes our mind tangled like twisted threads, losing all desire to do anything. Many people often say that life is too harsh, that people today hurt each other so much. However, if we look deeper, we will see that what truly causes us pain is not external, but lies within our own mind. People insult us for a moment, but we carry it all day. People get angry and forget, but we carry the feeling of being offended for an entire week. The Buddha taught that life inherently has adversities, but if our mind knows how to be at peace, all suffering becomes light, like a breeze skimming the surface of a lake without disturbing the water. But if our mind doesn't know patience, even a gentle drop of water can agitate an entire ocean. Patience and forbearance in life are not small matters. How many families have fractured over an unrestrained word? How many friendships have dissolved over a minute of anger? How many jobs have been lost over a single failure to remain calm? We often think that confrontation and strong reactions are signs of courage. But in reality, in Buddhism, patience and forbearance are the greatest strengths, because one who can conquer others merely with words achieves only a very small victory. But one who can conquer the 9 storms of anger within their own heart is a true hero. That is why, when we are not patient, we lose many things. Sometimes things we had to strive for our entire lives to obtain. And when we know patience, we retain peace, wisdom, meditative mind, and good things by our side. In the Dhammapada, it is taught that a person without patience is like a car without brakes speeding downhill. Just a moment of anger can damage both body and mind. But a person who knows patience is like a car with a steady steering wheel. No matter how rough the road, they can complete the journey. Patience is not weak endurance, nor is it giving in to let others walk all over you. It is a form of strength rooted in wisdom. When the mind is clear, we know what is worth reacting to and what will only make us lose our peace. When the mind is at peace, we are not easily swayed by external circumstances. A person who knows patience truly knows how to love themselves, because they do not let others take away their joy, peace, and wisdom. To understand the power of forbearance, we must revisit the anecdotes that the Buddha himself recounted to his disciples. One of the most famous stories is that of the ascetic who was tormented by King Kali. This is a story that, just by hearing it once, one can grasp the true meaning of forbearance. Long ago, there was an ascetic who specialized in cultivating loving kindness and forbearance. He lived deep in the forest, far from the mundane world, nurturing his mind daily with purity and compassion for all beings. One day, King Kali and his retinue went hunting in that forest. King Kali was known as a hot-tempered and autocratic ruler. When he saw the ascetic meditating calmly under a tree, the king immediately felt arrogant and wanted to test whether this practitioner was truly forbearing. The king ordered the ascetic to be tied up, then verbally abused and insulted him, even challenging him to react. Yet, the ascetic maintained a calm mind, responding only with eyes full of loving kindness and compassion for the king. This serenity only made King Kali angrier. He ordered the ascetic's hands and feet to be cut off to see if he would harbor anger. Even when his body was no longer whole, the ascetic did not complain or utter a single lament, only gently stating, "I am not angry with your majesty," for anger only muddies one's mind and creates bad karma. "I only feel compassion for your majesty, because actions born of ignorance will lead to severe retribution." That story shows us that forbearance is not about enduring a few unpleasant words or an unfavorable situation. Forbearance is keeping the mind unshaken amidst storms. Forbearance is not giving rise to anger even when others insult you. Forbearance is maintaining mindfulness, no matter how harsh the circumstances. When the ascetic was tortured, physical pain was a matter of the body. But whether to feel anger or not was a matter of the mind. And the ascetic chose the path of wisdom, not allowing physical harm to drag his mind down. In telling this story, the Buddha wanted to remind us that practitioners, like everyone else, encounter adversity. But if we choose resentment, we create more karma and harm ourselves. If we choose forbearance, we dissolve karma and protect our minds. If the story of the ascetic is a great lesson in the scriptures, then in our current lives, there are countless small stories that contain an entire truth. Once, the Lin Buddhist channel met a man named Fong, a rideshare driver. His face was gentle, his voice soft, and he always maintained a polite attitude with customers. During our conversation, he shared a story that I'll never forget because it clearly demonstrated the power of forbearance in everyday life. That day, he picked up a female passenger carrying a large cup of coffee. As soon as the car started moving, the passenger accidentally spilled the coffee on the seat. The coffee spread, staining the upholstery. She was startled and embarrassed, but instead of apologizing, she blamed him, saying the car wasn't running smoothly, which caused her to spill the drink. Mr. Fong felt uncomfortable. He recounted that in that moment, Anger flared up, like fire meeting wind. He wanted to argue back, to say that she was clearly careless. So why was she blaming him? But at that very instant, a saying his teacher had taught him suddenly came to mind. When you lose your composure, you lose your opportunity. He remained silent, tried to breathe gently, and then calmly replied, "It's okay, ma'am. I'll clean it up." As he said those words, his heart lightened, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. The customer was surprised, but said nothing more. He pulled over, gave her a towel, and smiled, saying it was no big deal. At the end of the trip, the customer looked at him for a long time and then thanked him. He thought that was the end of it. But unexpectedly, a few days later, the customer proactively contacted him and referred some of her family's regular customers to him. When asked why she chose him, she simply replied that he was kind and good-hearted. She said she had met many hot-tempered drivers who easily got upset, and even a small oversight would make them furious. His calm and tolerant demeanor, however, made a lasting impression on her. Mr. Fong smiled and told me that a little patience, which keeps people's goodwill, is worth more than winning an argument, which leaves everyone exhausted. He might lose a little time cleaning the seat, but maintaining peace in his heart and creating good karma is truly valuable. That story made me reflect for a long time. Often we think that patience is a disadvantage and yielding is weakness. But actually, patience is how we protect what is important. A person who lacks patience is like someone burning down their house to light their way. A moment of anger can ruin an entire future. A person who knows patience is like someone who can keep a lamp lit in the wind. Its strong light will illuminate the long path ahead. If we look deeper into the reasons why people lack patience, we will find that it largely stems from ego clinging and ignorance. People easily become angry because they feel insulted. People easily argue because they feel belittled. People easily lose their temper because they always think they are right. The human ego is like fire. Just a slight spark can make it burst into flames. Therefore, cultivating patience is not just about suppressing emotions, but about learning to let go of the ego, learning to see others with compassionate eyes. When we understand that those who hurt us are actually suffering themselves, that those who get angry at us are also influenced by ignorance, we will find our hearts softer, more loving, and more forgiving. In Buddhist teachings, patience is divided into many types. Patience in the face of adversity, patience toward those who harm us, patience in life's difficulties, and patience toward inner desires. Each form of patience cultivates a different ability within us. Patience in adversity helps us remain calm. Patience toward those who insult us helps us maintain wisdom. Patience in temptations helps us preserve our moral conduct. Patience toward ourselves helps us grow. A person who knows patience is one who knows how to observe their mind. If we see our heart burning with anger, that is the time to stop. If we feel that the words we are about to speak could cause harm, that is the time to be silent. Do not think that silence is weakness. Silence at the right time is wisdom. Patience at the right time is a blessing. Someone asked how to cultivate patience in daily life when everyone gets annoyed and loses their temper sometimes. In truth, patience is not something far-fetched. It starts with the smallest things. In the morning, when stuck in traffic, instead of getting annoyed, take a deep breath and remind yourself that anger won't clear the traffic. When children do something you dislike, instead of scolding them, look at them with tolerant eyes. If someone says something unpleasant, instead of immediately reacting, ask yourself if it's true and if it's worth losing your peace over. When you feel your heart stirred, remember the image of a lake that you always want to keep clear. Let unpleasant words fall like dust, unable to muddy the water. Practicing forbearance is learning to see things with the depth of insight. The scriptures say that when the wind rises, the rice stalks bend down. It is precisely because they know how to bend that the wind cannot topple the entire rice field. It is the same with those who know patience. When faced with adversity, we do not resist with anger, but use gentleness to resolve it. And when our mind is gentle, everything that comes to us also becomes lighter. Not because life itself becomes lighter, but because our heart has learned how to let go. The Lin Ung Buddhist channel wants to remind you of something the Buddha once taught. One who knows patience retains their own happiness. One who does not know patience loses everything. Patience is not about disadvantaging oneself, but about keeping the mind from being swept away by the current of anger. When we maintain a calm mind, all good things will naturally find their way to us. Just as the ancient ascetic was tormented by King Kali without harboring resentment, that very patience made him a shining example for generations to come. And just like Mr. Fong, a single moment of self-restraint allowed him to preserve an opportunity, maintain people's goodwill, and keep inner peace. If we want peace, let us learn patience. If we want happiness, let us learn to let go. If we want wisdom, let us learn to see things through the light of compassion. Patience is not easy to practice, but each time we are patient, we conquer ourselves. And that victory is the foundation of the happiness that the Buddha wished to bestow upon all of us. In this life full of worries, each of us has had days when our minds felt as heavy as stone. The moment we open our eyes, we feel tired. The moment we step out, we feel that everything is not as we wish. Sometimes, just a word from a loved one can darken our hearts for an entire long day. Sometimes, seeing others happy and successful makes our hearts sink. Sometimes, seeing someone suffer, we don't feel enough empathy to help them. Humans are born with a great capacity for love, but it is the difficult experiences in life that cause our hearts to harden. We treat others with more caution than kindness, with more guardedness than tolerance. That is why life becomes increasingly suffocating, and our minds constantly dwell on things that make us unhappy. The more the mind thinks, the more tired it becomes. The more tired it becomes, the more easily it gets irritated. The more irritated it gets, the further away it moves from happiness. The Buddha taught that to lessen suffering, one must learn to return to and cultivate one's mind. And among countless practices, the Four Immeasurable Minds is the crucial path that helps people escape unnecessary thoughts, thereby rediscovering the peace they have long lost. The Four Immeasurable Minds are the four vast and boundless qualities of a practitioner's mind. Loving kindness is to give joy. Compassion is to alleviate suffering. Sympathetic joy is to rejoice with others. And equanimity is to let go of all distinctions between oneself and others. These are not just doctrines from the scriptures, but a very practical healing remedy. When the mind has loving kindness, we think less about what bothers us. When the mind has compassion, we lighten the burdens of others' suffering, thereby lessening our own heaviness. When the mind has sympathetic joy, we break through envy, which is the cause of so many afflictions. And when the mind has equanimity, we transcend the boundaries of right and wrong, allowing our heart to expand and accept all differences in life. Therefore, whoever cultivates the four immeasurable minds will have a peaceful mind, and their life will be happy. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha once taught that the human mind is like fertile ground. If bad seeds are planted, poisonous weeds will grow. If good seeds are sown, fragrant flowers will bloom. The four immeasurable minds are four good seeds that anyone can sow within themselves if they commit to practicing. Each day, when we know how to bring joy to others, our hearts naturally blossom. When we know how to lighten the suffering of others, our minds also become lighter. When we know how to rejoice in the happiness of others, our minds are no longer confined. When we know how to let go of distinctions, our minds become as vast as the sky. When the mind is expansive, life becomes expansive. When the mind is narrow, life always feels cramped. Loving kindness, metta, is the ability to bring joy to others. But this joy is not merely giving gifts or material things. That joy lies in every word we speak, every glance we give, every small act we perform. Sometimes, just a word of encouragement can brighten someone's entire day. Sometimes, just a sincere apology can dissolve a heavy stone in another's heart. Sometimes, just by yielding a step to someone, they gain more faith in life. That is loving kindness. A person with loving kindness does not need to be wealthy or powerful. Just a heart that thinks a little for others, that warms someone's heart a little, has already sown blessings. Compassion, karuna, is the desire to extinguish the suffering of others. When we see someone suffer, we are moved with pity and seek to uplift them. Compassion is not pity, but understanding. In the Metta Sutta, the Buddha taught that compassion arises when we understand that all beings desire peace and happiness, like ourselves, and fear suffering like ourselves. Therefore, we open our hearts to them. When we know how to empathize with the suffering of others, we ourselves reduce the suffering within us. Because compassion is like a cool stream of water that soothes wherever it flows. Sympathetic joy, mudita, is the happiness we feel when others are happy. This is a practice that helps us overcome jealousy and envy, which are causes of immense human suffering. When we see others more talented, richer, or happier, instead of feeling upset or envious, we practice rejoicing with them. We rejoice because they have blessings. Rejoice because life has more good things. Sympathetic joy is like the sunlight that melts away the fog of envy. A person who knows sympathetic joy always has a light and bright mind. Equanimity, upekkha, is the ability to let go of all distinctions. Equanimity is not indifference, but an impartial mind. It means not seeing anyone as an enemy, nor anyone as owing us a debt. When the mind has equanimity, we can let go of afflictions, let go of envy, and let go of ego clinging. A person with equanimity is one who looks at life with a tolerant perspective, with a mind as vast as the sky, not allowing a small matter to constrict their heart. To understand the four immeasurable minds in real life, let's look at some very ordinary, simple, yet profound stories. In a small neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, there lived a woman who sold porridge, named Mrs. Sow. People loved her, not just because her porridge was delicious, but because of her kind heart. Every day, she sold a hot pot of chicken porridge from early morning. Most of her customers were workers going to their jobs early, taxi drivers, and manual laborers. Everyone was familiar with Mrs. Sow scooping porridge while asking each person how their day was, if they were tired from work, or if they needed extra green onions or a piece of meat. No one noticed that every day a portion of porridge in her pot was set aside very early. That portion was not for any other customer, but for Mr. Tu, an old man who lived at the end of the alley. Mr. Tu was poor and lived alone in a small, dilapidated house. Every morning, he would hobble with a cane to Mrs. Sow's stall, receive a hot bowl of porridge, and smile gently like a child. Some days, it would pour rain, and Mr. Tu would trudge through the puddles to get his usual bowl of porridge. He said that just one spoonful of her porridge made him feel like he still had someone to rely on. Mrs. Sow would just smile and say that she helped him however she could, because everyone suffered in life, and the elderly suffered even more. Every morning, seeing him arrive, her heart felt a little lighter. That was the loving kindness and compassion of an ordinary person. One day, Mrs. Sow noticed that it was almost time, but Mr. Tu still hadn't passed by, and her heart grew uneasy. She waited a little longer, but still saw no familiar figure. She immediately turned off the stove, scooped the prepared porridge, and went straight to his house. When she arrived, she called out repeatedly, but heard no reply from him. Finally, she heard his faint voice. He had a cold, his body shaking with chills, unable to go out as usual. When she entered, he looked at her and burst into tears of gratitude. He said that he was lying alone that morning, both tired and cold, afraid no one would know to help. Yet, just a moment later, he heard her call. He told her that that bowl of porridge was not just a meal, but a comfort, a feeling of being cared for in life. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Mrs. Sow's kind heart. People said she was poor, but her heart was richer than anyone's. She would just smile and say that she, too, had suffered and understood the feeling of being uncared for. Helping others was also helping herself. Every morning, when she gave Mr. Tu his bowl of porridge, her heart warmed, and that warmth sustained her mind every day. That story may be a very small thing, not requiring much effort or money, but its value is immense, because it is not every day that we encounter such a compassionate heart. Mrs. Sow did not do it for praise, nor to be known. She did it because her heart was full of loving kindness and compassion. And in that sharing, there was also sympathetic joy and equanimity. She was happy to see Mr. Tu eat a hot bowl of porridge. She did not demand repayment. She did not calculate gains or losses. That is the four immeasurable minds in everyday life. When I told that story to a group of Buddhists, I remember someone asking how to cultivate the four immeasurable minds when life is so full of injustice and people are so calculating. I replied that the four immeasurable minds do not demand anything grand. They start with the smallest things, from a gentle word instead of a reproach, from a smile when others are sad, from sharing when someone is in difficulty, from silence when we know words could hurt others. These small acts, if done with a pure heart, become immeasurable blessings. One who wishes to practice the four immeasurable minds, must first learn to see others as they see themselves. Everyone has their own suffering. Everyone has moments of weakness. When we understand that, our hearts naturally soften. Loving kindness begins with wishing others well in our thoughts. Compassion begins with not stepping on anyone's pain. Sympathetic joy begins with a smile when seeing others succeed. Equanimity begins with not weighing right and wrong in small matters. When we know how to open our hearts to life, life also opens its heart to us. During practice, we can combine meditation on the four immeasurable minds to nurture our minds. When sitting still, think of a person we cherish and send them wishes of peace. That is loving-kindness. Think of someone who is suffering and wish them to overcome it. That is compassion. Think of someone who has just achieved something good and wish them continued success. That is sympathetic joy. Finally, think of a person we find difficult to accept and silently remind ourselves that they too are human and also desire happiness, like us. That is equanimity. Day by day, little by little, our mind expands, our heart brightens, and our wisdom reduces unnecessary thoughts. The Zen Buddhist channel wants to reiterate the words the Buddha taught millennia ago. When there is loving kindness in our heart, we will not harm anyone. When there is compassion in our heart, we will know how to support others. When there is sympathetic joy in our heart, we will not be envious. And when there is equanimity in our heart, we will be free. Happiness comes from these four seeds. We don't need to wait for anything grand. We just need our heart to warm up a little, lighten up a little, and know how to love a little more. When the four immeasurable minds are nurtured, our mind will think less, our life will be peaceful, and happiness will naturally follow us like a shadow. In this life, there is a common suffering that almost everyone carries, but rarely names correctly. The feeling of unease when everything changes beyond our control. We worry about our career rising today and falling tomorrow. We fear that the people we love will eventually leave us. We worry that our health will no longer be as strong as before. We fear that youth slips away faster than the plans we haven't had time to fulfill. Some even fear the gazes of others, fear an uncertain future, fear things they don't know if they will actually happen. It is this fear that makes us think a lot, remember a lot, grieve a lot, and tire a lot. Whenever the mind gets caught in the vortex of worry, we often forget that impermanence itself is operating every second in this life. Then, from small matters, the mind begins to exaggerate problems, creating stories in our heads that exhaust us more than the heavy labor. Someone once said, "Life doesn't tire us out because of the events that happen, but because we think about them too much." When we encounter a small difficulty, we immediately imagine it growing larger. When someone says something that saddens us, we carry that remark with us for many days. When a person changes, we become confused and look for faults in ourselves. When something doesn't go our way, we cling to it in our hearts and then ask why we suffer. In reality, suffering does not lie in the event itself, but in our failure to understand the nature of impermanence, leading us to constantly demand and wish for things to remain stable as we desire. But people forget that even the breath flowing in and out does not remain still for a single moment. Everything is changing, even faster than our footsteps. Some are healthy in the morning and hospitalized by evening. Some are laughing and talking in the morning, only to become sad news by evening. Someone who bothered us just yesterday might become a cherished memory today. Our minds constantly chase after these changes, thereby creating more anxiety for ourselves. Many people wonder why they think so much, why they fear the future so much, and why they find it too hard to let go of old wounds. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is ignorance. That is, we fail to see the truth that all phenomena in this world arise from conditions. When conditions cease, they dissipate. When we don't see this, we imagine everything is real. We imagine the people we love will always love us. We imagine joy will always be there. We imagine a hurtful word will forever be a scar. We imagine today's sadness will last a lifetime. It is this imagination that leads us to cling. And it is this clinging that causes us suffering. When we understand impermanence, we realize that holding on to something that is constantly changing is impossible. It's like clutching a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. The more the mind tries to hold on to changing things, the more exhausted it becomes. During one of his discourses, the Buddha once told his disciples that everything with form must perish. Great trees eventually fall. High mountains eventually erode. If this very body cannot be held onto, how much less so the smaller things in life? Upon hearing this, one disciple asked the Buddha, "If everything is impermanent, what should I cling to so as not to fear life?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "If everything is impermanent, what is there to fear? Only clinging born of ignorance gives rise to fear. The one who knows that everything changes will gently walk through life like someone walking on wet sand, leaving no deep footprints." That answer seems simple, yet is very difficult to practice, because humans are accustomed to loving with attachment, hating with permanence, and longing with a tight grasp. Looking back at life, we clearly see that impermanence does not wait for us to be ready. Indeed, some people who were healthy this morning are in a hospital bed by evening. Some who were angry with each other yesterday have no chance to say, "I'm sorry" today. Some who were strong years ago now have gray hair and stooped backs. Therefore, impermanence is not something to fear, but a reminder to live in the present, to let go of anger, to love appropriately, and to live authentically. When we don't understand impermanence, we think a lot because we fear loss. When we understand impermanence, we think less because we know that we cannot hold on to anything anyway. In a small village by the river, there lived an electrician named Min. From childhood, Min grew up under the overly strict discipline of his father, a hot-tempered carpenter. Mr. Kwong, Min's father, always wanted his son to become a good man, so every small mistake Min made resulted in a scolding. Min grew up feeling self-pity, always thinking his father didn't love him. Although his father never physically abused him, his harsh words, criticisms, and cold stares filled Min's heart with resentment. Even after growing up and starting his own family, Min still carried that heavy feeling. Every time he visited his parents, he felt the distance growing. While outwardly polite, inwardly, he harbored a jumble of grievances. Min thought that if his father had been gentler, kinder, perhaps his life would have been less painful. These thoughts followed him for many years. Min didn't realize that his clinging to the past caused him to miss out on many joys of the present. One day, Min's father fell gravely ill, the sickness coming as suddenly as an unannounced storm. Mr. Kwong had always been strong, eating and working regularly, never having a serious illness. But within a few weeks, he transformed from a robust man into a frail figure lying in a hospital bed. His breathing became weaker, and his eyes blurred. Upon receiving the news, Min rushed his father to the hospital. Looking at his father lying there, trembling slightly from pain, his calloused hands, once strong, now withered and powerless, Min suddenly felt something he had never paid attention to before. Impermanence. This sense of impermanence was like a cool stream of water flowing through Min's heart. All the past resentments suddenly seemed very small. The scoldings of yesteryear, once perceived as wounds, now seemed like sounds that had long faded. The father who had once hurt him was now so weak that even moving was difficult. At that moment, Min no longer saw himself as a scolded child, but saw his father as an ordinary human being, living a life full of suffering, sadness, and worries, which had made his words harsh. Min realized that his father was not bad. He, too, was swayed by impermanence, controlled by karmic forces, and clouded by anger. Looking at his emaciated father, Min understood that resentment could no longer be harbored. The only thing left was love. Min held his father's hand longer than usual. He told his father about his work, his family, and the times he had misunderstood his father. Mr. Kwong looked at him with tired but warm eyes. At times, he softly apologized for the overly strict years that had hurt his son. Min shook his head, saying he no longer blamed him, for he had understood how fragile human life is. When impermanence arrives, nothing's important enough for us to hold on to forever in our hearts. From that moment, Min felt a gentle liberation, as if a 30-year burden had suddenly fallen from his shoulders. He felt himself breathing lighter, his mind more expansive, and his heart more at peace. Min's story makes us realize that many of the sorrows we carry in our hearts do not come from others, but from our failure to understand that they too are impermanent, like us. The person who saddened us will grow old. The person who hurt us will weaken. The person we were angry with will one day regret. Both we and they are small beings swept away by the current of impermanence. When we see that, we no longer want to blame anyone. We only want to love, because love is the only action strong enough to soothe the suffering of both. A Zen master once told his disciples, "If you see others treating you badly, don't be quick to get angry, for they, too, are under the influence of impermanence. Their minds are unstable today, which is why their words are harsh. But who knows? Tomorrow, they might regret it. They have lost their peace, which is why they disturb the peace of others." One who understands impermanence does not rush to blame, knowing that today is one way, but tomorrow may be different. Therefore, a practitioner always looks at everything with gentle eyes, always seeing change in every moment, so as not to let their mind fall into delusion. When we look deeply into impermanence, we see three things very clearly. First, nothing is worth being angry about for long, because the person we are angry with, who might be here today, may not have the opportunity for us to be angry with tomorrow. Second, nothing is worth clinging to, because everything is changing. little by little. Third, nothing is worth fearing, because even fear itself is impermanent. It too will pass if we choose to look deeply. The Buddha taught that upon seeing impermanence, people will abandon ego clinging, reduce craving, let go of anger, and gently walk through life. If you are worried about something, try contemplating impermanence. Look at your breath, seeing that each inhalation and exhalation is different. Look at your mind, seeing that the mind of one moment is different from the mind of the next. Look at a flower, and just one day later it has withered. Look at a child, and before long, they have become an adult. Look back at yourself and see that things that once caused pain are no longer important. When you contemplate in this way, your mind will think less, because you know that the things that are worrying you now will also change. No worry is eternal. No pain is everlasting. And no future will be exactly as the mind imagines. Understanding impermanence is not for pessimism, but for living the present more fully. A person who knows impermanence will love the people around them, cherish what they have, forgive faster, and live more kindly, because they know that everything is temporary. A handshake is temporary. A loving word is temporary. A peaceful evening with parents is temporary. If it is temporary, then live fully. Live beautifully. Live with a light heart. The scriptures teach that one who understands impermanence passes through life light as a floating cloud. They are not caught in anger or hatred because they see that anger and hatred also dissipate. They are not caught in fear because they see that fear also passes. They are not caught in ego clinging because they see that the self is also just a stream in this karmic existence. When the mind no longer clings to changing things, the mind naturally finds peace. When the mind is at peace, it does not think much. When the mind does not think much, life becomes light. Therefore, if you are worried, suffering, or resenting someone, sit down and look directly at impermanence. Look deeply like Min, looking at his sick father. Look deeply to see that nothing is worth holding on to in your heart for so long. Look deeply to see that your heart is only expansive when you let go. Look deeply to see that suffering is just waves, while the nature of the mind is inherently a still lake. Knowing impermanence is not for us to fear, but for us to love more and regret less. When impermanence is understood, the mind will have the most stable support, and from there, peace begins. When speaking of the greatest sufferings in life, the ancients used to say that people suffer because they love incorrectly, and suffer because they are angry in the wrong place. The mind of anger is something that flares up easily, but is extremely difficult to extinguish. Some people get angry over just one unpleasant remark. Some lose valuable relationships over a small misunderstanding. Some lose inner peace, waste time, lose jobs, and miss opportunities for a happy life due to anger. What is noteworthy is that often anger does not arise from an actual event, but from thoughts in our heads. We are angry because we feel ignored, hurt, or insulted, but that feeling is often just a product of imagination, of the ego, of a quick reaction without sufficient reflection. Everyone has been angry at least once. Sometimes it's just a little Other times, it flares up like a storm, sweeping away all composure. The truth is, after every outburst of anger, whether we win or lose the argument, our mind is exhausted, because anger is a fire that first burns the one who carries it. An angry person is like someone holding hot coals, wanting to throw them at another, but their own hand gets burned first. The Buddha taught that when one thought of anger arises, hundreds of thousands of doors to karmic obstacles open. This teaching is not a threat, but a clear truth. When anger arises, body, speech, and mind all create karma. In a moment of losing control, we can say what should not be said, do what should not be done, and think what should not be thought. The body creates karma through impulsive actions. Speech creates karma through hurtful words, and the mind creates karma through the evil intent that arises in the head. Karma from anger, once formed, will bring its retribution sooner or later. In life, we often encounter many people who, because of a fit of anger, have lost the most important things. Some get angry with their parents and leave home, later regretting not being able to return before their parents passed away. Some lose their jobs because of a temperamental outburst with a customer. Some, because of an argument with their lover, utter irrevocable words that cause their relationship to crack. Sometimes, just 1 minute of anger must be paid for with many years of regret. Therefore, understanding the danger of anger is the first step in cultivating the mind. One who knows they are angry is like one who knows their house is on fire. They know to find a way to extinguish it, and they know not to add fuel to the fire. If in the previous part we saw impermanence as a remedy to heal the root of worry, then in this part we will see that the mind of anger is what makes people worry more, suffer more, and think more. When we are angry with someone, our mind immediately races with thoughts like, why did they say that? What did they mean? How should I respond? How dare they insult me like that? These streams of thought increasingly push us away from peace. The more we think, the hotter we get. The hotter we get, the more we lose our wisdom. When wisdom is obscured, we easily create karma. Therefore, a true practitioner never regards anger as a small matter. They know that anger is a silent thief, stealing blessings, stealing health, stealing clarity, and stealing the opportunity to live peacefully. A monk once taught that the mind of anger is like a pot of water boiling excessively. When the water boils, we cannot see anything beneath the swirling surface. The mind of anger is the same. When a fit of anger flares up, we no longer see the truth clearly. We only see distorted images of emotions and conjectures. Anger blurs our vision, tenses our breath, and makes our heart pound. An angry person can speak wrongly, understand wrongly, and act wrongly. Therefore, anger is compared to fire. Fire not only burns others, but also burns oneself, causing the mind to become dry and exhausted. A person who is gentle, like water, is cool, fresh, soft, and resilient. A person who is angry, like fire, is violent, flares up, but quickly burns out. Therefore, the Buddha advises us to learn the gentleness of water. Water can penetrate stone without making a sound. Water flows gently, yet is persistent. A willow tree in the wind looks fragile, but it is its gentleness that keeps it from breaking in a strong storm. The more a person learns gentleness, the less they are overwhelmed by circumstances. One evening, a story happened to Mr. Thang, a construction worker. The story is simple, but clearly shows the consequences of anger. Mr. Thang worked at a large construction site on the outskirts of the city. Although the work was hard, his income was stable, and his colleagues were harmonious. Mr. Thang was well liked by many because of his gentle nature, diligence, and rarely causing conflicts. But one day, due to a small dispute, his life took a different turn. That day, the sun was scorching, and workers were laboring under the glaring heat, making everyone uncomfortable. During a short break, Mr. Thang and a colleague named Hung had an argument about task distribution. Hung claimed Mr. Thang hadn't done his agreed-upon share of the work. Thang, in turn, believed Hung was not telling the truth. Initially, it was just a few mild rebuttals, but under the oppressive heat and the fatigue of a day's work, the two quickly became tense. Hung uttered an insult. Thang's face flushed upon hearing it. An unpleasant feeling began to surge within his mind. He felt disrespected. He felt insulted. And thoughts of retaliation started to emerge. If he had paused for a few seconds, then perhaps things would have been different. But anger does not allow people to pause. Anger incites, pushes, and urges. Anger makes people think that if they don't react, others will disrespect them. Anger makes people forget the consequences. In a moment, without thinking, Thang pushed Hung forcefully. The push was not strong enough to cause serious harm, but because the cement floor was slippery, Hung fell to the ground, and people around rushed over. Fortunately, he only sustained minor scrapes, but the incident was more serious than Thang imagined. This was because the construction site had very strict rules, and any act of violence would be severely penalized. The incident was reported to the management. After an investigation, the company decided to discipline Thang and terminate his employment. When he heard the decision, Thang felt utterly crushed. He stood motionless for a long time. His family's main source of income was gone. His wife was pregnant, and the mortgage debts for their house remained. He felt as if his life had been pushed into a deep pit, all because of a fit of anger that lasted only a few seconds. In his small, rented room that night, Thang sat alone. Tears fell, and he uttered a sentence that anyone hearing would find bitter. If only I had kept quiet then. If only I had turned away then. If only I had not cared about those words then. If only I had known how to restrain myself. But those if only words, once it was too late, could not change the outcome. Thang's story is a lesson very close to each of our lives. Many people, due to a moment of letting go of control, a word spoken, or a brief loss of self-mastery, lose many years of peace. The mind of anger is like an untamed horse. Once it breaks loose from the reins, it causes immeasurable harm. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that if people knew the danger of anger as they know the danger of fire, they would never let their minds become enraged. Because when anger arises, wisdom vanishes. An angry person cannot distinguish right from wrong, cannot see cause and effect, cannot foresee consequences, and cannot see the suffering of others. In Buddhist teachings, anger is considered one of the three poisons: craving, anger, and ignorance. if craving drives people to pursue desires and feel unfulfilled, then anger is what causes people to destroy what they already have. Craving makes the mind chase. Anger makes the mind push away. Both prevent the mind from ever finding stability, like a lake surface disturbed by the wind, always rippling, unable to reflect the moon. To see the moon, the water must be still. To see wisdom, the mind must be at peace. And the mind is only at peace when we overcome anger. A person with much anger is like a car without brakes. Fast, but very dangerous. Just a small situation can cause a major accident. Life is the same. Those who lack self-control easily hurt others without realizing it. Angry people rarely know they are angry. They believe they are merely reacting to wrongdoing. But in reality, anger is not a righteous reaction. Anger is an egoic reaction. Anger arises when we feel personally offended. But if we look with the eyes of non-self, we will see that the person speaking hurtful words is also suffering. They speak that way because their mind is restless. They behave that way because their mind is agitated. They do wrong because they are ignorant. Understanding this, we will be less angry with them, and instead have a mind of loving kindness and compassion. Not a weak compassion, but a powerful compassion. A compassionate person is not angry because they know that anger only creates more suffering. The scriptures tell a story about a teacher who was being verbally abused by someone. A disciple standing nearby was enraged and said the teacher should retaliate. The teacher smiled gently and asked, "If that person brings you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The disciple replied, "It belongs to the giver." The teacher said that insult is the same. If we do not accept it, it does not belong to us. The disciple, upon hearing this, immediately understood that his own reaction was what mattered, not the other person's words. Looking at ourselves, we see that whenever anger arises, we often think that others are causing us suffering. But in reality, that suffering originates from our own mind. The mind refuses to let go. The mind refuses to be patient. The mind refuses to take a step back. Whereas if we just step back a little, like a willow bending in the wind, we would avoid unnecessary storms. To reduce anger, the first thing to do is learn to breathe. Breathing is not just inhaling and exhaling, but bringing the mind back to the breath to prevent ourselves from being swept away by the fire of anger. When anger arises, the breath becomes shallow. If we know how to stop and breathe slowly, the anger will weaken. My teacher often taught that when angry, you should count your yui breaths. Inhale, feeling the body hot. Exhale, feeling the mind cooling down. Inhale, knowing you are angry. Exhale, knowing you want to let go. Just a few breaths like that, and you will no longer be controlled by anger. The mind of anger is like a venomous snake. If you don't disturb it, it will leave on its own. The second thing is to learn to see others with compassionate eyes. When someone says something that hurts you, try to see them as a child who is in pain and reacts impulsively. The person who hurts others is a person who is hurting inside. An angry person is someone who doesn't know how to endure their own suffering. Therefore, instead of anger, we can choose to be kind. Not kind out of weakness, but kind out of understanding. Understanding that everyone in this world carries their own wounds. Understanding that everyone is influenced by ignorance. understanding that everyone has made mistakes at some point. The third thing is to contemplate karma. Whenever you are about to get angry, remember the Buddha's teaching that when one thought of anger arises, hundreds of thousands of doors to karmic obstacles open. Looking back at life, we see that no one has ever achieved anything through anger. Even if, in the moment, they feel they are right, in the end, it always leaves consequences. A practitioner fears no one, only karma. Karma from anger is like a fire that will spread across one's field of blessings. Blessings cultivated over many years can be burned away in just a few minutes of anger. When we think this way, we will know how to protect our minds. The fourth thing is to learn the gentleness of water. Water does not confront stone, but can penetrate it. Water is gentle yet powerful. Water flows with the current without losing its nature. A person who knows how to cultivate their mind must also be flexible like water, not clinging to a rigid ego. Rigidity makes us easily break in the face of adversity. Gentleness helps us overcome storms. When we know how to adjust the mind of anger, life will be gentler. We will argue less, demand less, and react less. We know that inner peace is more important than proving who is right or wrong. We know that maintaining peace is more valuable than winning an argument. We know that harmony brings true happiness, while anger only brings bitterness. Let us remember that the mind of anger is like fire. Fire can be used for cooking or warming, but it can also burn down houses. Anger, if contemplated, can become a powerful energy to help us correct ourselves and make progress. But if not controlled, it will destroy everything. The Buddha taught that one who conquers oneself is the greatest victor. Conquering others is only a victory for a moment. Conquering the anger within one's heart is a lifelong victory. When we understand that anger never brings benefit, we will naturally know how to let go. When we know how to let go, our mind will be light. When the mind is light, we will think less. When we think less, we will live peacefully. And when we live peacefully, blessings will naturally come. When speaking of life's troubles, everyone has sighed and wondered why they have to endure so many unpleasant things. Some work diligently, but their finances remain tight. Some treat others well, but are misunderstood. Some are gentle, but frequently encounter accidents and illnesses. Others feel they are trying very hard, but the harder they try, the more life seems to mock them, with one problem after another descending without warning. Many Buddhists, when visiting the temple, often complain that they don't understand why they live virtuously, yet still face suffering. These questions, from an ordinary perspective, are very difficult to explain, but under the light of the law of karma, cause and effect, everything in this world has its reason. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once taught that all phenomena operate according to cause and effect. Nothing arises naturally, and nothing perishes naturally. A seed sown, whether good or bad, silently germinates over time. Sometimes sown this year, it may not bloom until next year. Sometimes sown in this life, it may not bear fruit until a future life. Because people do not see this process, they mistakenly believe that life is unfair to them. When we are mistaken, we complain. When we complain, the mind becomes heavier. And when the mind is heavy, we think endlessly without finding a way out. This stagnation gives rise to anxiety, and affliction. Therefore, the Buddha taught that to lessen excessive thinking, one must first see the law of karma influencing every breath. When we look deeply, we realize that many sufferings do not come from circumstances, but from the way we sowed seeds in the past. Some seeds are sown by actions, some by words. And some seeds are sown by even thoughts we consider harmless, yet they nurture karmic forces. Killing shortens one's lifespan. Stealing leads to poverty. Speaking harshly causes family discord. Sexual misconduct creates unhappiness in marriage. Greed, anger, and ignorance cause the human mind to be deluded and lead people to states of suffering. All of these are not threats, but truths distilled from countless lifetimes. Those who do not understand karma look at life with eyes of resentment. Those who understand karma look at life with eyes of contemplation. When we clearly know that everything has its cause, we no longer lament our fate. We no longer ask why we must suffer. We no longer see life as unfair. This very understanding lightens our mind by half. One who understands karma is like one who knows the flow of water, knowing which way it flows, knowing that if they stir up dirt, the water will become murky, but if they leave it alone, the water will become clear. Thanks to this, they no longer have to use force to fight against what is already according to natural law. Some people say that if karma is truly so precise, why are many evil people still rich and happy? And why do many good people suffer misfortune? But the Buddha taught not to look at a single moment in life and conclude everything. Some retributions come quickly, like fire catching dry grass. Some retributions come slowly, like seeds lying in the earth, waiting for their day to sprout. Evil people may be enjoying blessings from good deeds they performed in the past, while bad retribution awaits them in the future. Good people may be paying off old karma, while the blessings they sow today will blossom tomorrow. If we only look at a snapshot and judge, it's like looking at a lake surface on a windy day and saying the water is never calm. Therefore, when studying the law of karma, we learn equanimity in all things. We no longer fear the unexpected. We no longer resent others. We no longer find life too heavy, because we know that everything is an extension of what we have created, and we ourselves today are shaping the retribution of tomorrow. This causes our mind to think less and to worry less about things beyond our control. When we understand karma, we are no longer easily angered or saddened, because we know that all events are part of the very natural law of the universe. There is an ordinary story that profoundly reflects the lesson of karma. It is the story of Ms. Huang, who owned a small grocery store in her neighborhood. Almost everyone living there had visited her store because her house was right on the main street and very convenient for buying odds and ends. In the early years, her store had many customers, but she had a bad habit of short-weighing and overcharging strangers, especially tourists. She thought that if she cheated a little, no one would notice. Every time a group of tourists visited, she would quickly adjust the scale, taking off a few 100 grams of meat or a few kilograms of fruit. At first, she felt happy earning a little extra money. But over time, it became a bad habit. She began to see dishonesty as normal and even comforted herself by thinking that all vendors do it. However, karma is never wrong, Even a small act of dishonesty sows a bad seed, and its retribution often comes unexpectedly. Sometime later, her son was lured by friends into an online investment scheme. Being too trusting, he handed over all his savings and was completely swindled. The day she found out, Ms. Huang was devastated, as if all her strength had been drained. She sat in a corner of the kitchen, her eyes vacant, her heart filled with all sorts of emotions: anxiety, fear, and unspoken regret. She clutched her head and mumbled, "Why is life so unfair to me?" She blamed the person who swindled her son, blamed her son's bad friends, and even blamed society. But the more she blamed, the more she hurt. Until, sitting quietly and soberly for a long time, she suddenly remembered the times she had intentionally short-weighed customers. She remembered the people who had bought goods and still smiled trustingly. She remembered the tourists who had asked her if the scale was accurate, and she confidently said it was. Those memories replayed like a film reel. At that very moment, she suddenly understood that what had happened to her son was not accidental. This was karma returning to her. Whatever one sows in life, life will return. She had once taken a little from others. Now life was taking back more from her. Her son's tears made her understand that even a small dishonesty can lead to bitter consequences. From that day on, Ms. Huang changed. She discarded the old scale and bought a new, accurate one. She sold at the correct prices, sometimes even deducting a little money for poor families. When tourists came, she no longer thought about how much she could raise the price, but only how she could sell fairly. The people around the neighborhood began to notice the change in her demeanor. They trusted her more, visited her store more often. And strangely, even though she no longer cheated, her income was better than before. The store became increasingly busy. People came because they trusted her, not just because it was convenient. She realized that blessings only come when we sow genuine seeds. The Buddha once taught that in this world, there are two things that cannot be hidden: the sun and the moon. But there is a third thing that he repeatedly emphasized: karma. Whether good karma or bad karma, it waits until the conditions are right to bear fruit. No one can escape or hide karma. The seed sown will silently follow us, like a shadow. When we understand this, we no longer feel that the suffering that comes to us is unfair. Instead, we use it as a lesson to correct ourselves, renew ourselves, and become a better person than yesterday. One who understands karma does not worry about the future, because they understand that the future is determined by what they are doing today. No one wants their future to be dark, so they choose to live virtuously now. No one wants a chaotic life, so they create good karma in every word and action. Understanding karma helps us think less, because we know we cannot change the fruits that have already ripened, but we can completely change the seeds we are currently sowing. When we look deeply into karma, we understand that worrying does not make things better. Blaming does not lighten life. Regret cannot erase what has already happened. Only wholesome actions in the present can help us create a peaceful future. Therefore, understanding the law of karma is not just a philosophical lesson, but also a remedy to reduce mental afflictions. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that the mind leads all phenomena. If the mind thinks wholesome thoughts, life moves toward good. If the mind thinks unwholesome thoughts, life moves toward suffering. When our mind thinks wholesome thoughts, we do not create bad karma. When our mind contemplates with clarity, we know what to do and what not to do. When the mind is at peace, life is at peace. When the mind is agitated, life is suffering. Therefore, to have a good life, we don't need to change the world, but only to cultivate ourselves. A practitioner is not someone who avoids suffering, but someone who clearly understands where the root of suffering lies and transforms it from there. When the mind no longer sows bad seeds, life naturally becomes less turbulent. To practice karma in life, we first need to observe ourselves daily. When speaking, we ask ourselves if these words create wholesome or unwholesome karma. When doing something, we ask ourselves where this action will lead us. When a thought arises, we ask ourselves if this thought is a seed of anger or loving kindness. This observation helps us gradually adjust ourselves and become more mindful. The most important thing is that we should not blame ourselves excessively when we accidentally create bad karma. What the Buddha taught is not to torment our souls over mistakes, but to transform mistakes into lessons so as not to repeat them. If we know we have made a mistake and are determined to correct it, we have taken a very big step on the path of wholesome stillness. Every evening before sleep, we can sit quietly for a few minutes to reflect on the day. We ask ourselves what we did today that made others happy. We also look back to see if we inadvertently caused anyone suffering. By doing so, we recognize the seeds we have sown to live better tomorrow. This is a very simple yet practical way of practice that the Buddha often advised his disciples to do, to keep their minds pure. One who knows how to reflect on themselves is very close to finding peace. Finally, the deepest lesson that karma brings us is humility. When we understand that everything that happens has its reason, we are no longer arrogant when things go well, and no longer despair when facing difficulties. We live with gratitude for the blessings we enjoy. We live with tolerance for the mistakes of others. We live with responsibility for ourselves. All of this stems from the understanding that we reap what we sow, without a single error. Ms. Huang understood this, and that understanding changed her life. Thanks to it, her mind lightened, and her life became more peaceful. When we understand karma deeply, our mind thinks less because we no longer fear tomorrow. We are not afraid of bad things happening because we know we didn't sow bad seeds. We don't resent suffering when it comes, because we know it's an opportunity to repay karma and transform it. We live more simply, more compassionately, and more steadfastly. Karma is not something to fear, but a lamp that illuminates our path in life. The brighter that lamp, the more peaceful the mind. The more peaceful the mind, the happier life becomes. Sow good, and you will meet good. Sow good, and you will meet blessings. One who lives according to karma is walking on the path of wisdom and peace. Walking through this turbulent life, everyone carries no small amount of heaviness in their heart. We are tired from thinking too much, from endless worries, from unintentionally hurtful words that prevent the mind from finding peace. Some people lie awake all night because of a single word from someone. Some constantly blame themselves for a small mistake. Some carry long-standing suffering because they were misunderstood by others. And we keep asking why our minds cannot be at peace, even though no one forces or binds us. Looking deeply into the cause of all these afflictions, we will realize a very important thing. Mental unrest largely stems from our own three actions: body, speech, and mind. If the body does wrong, speech speaks unwholesome words, and the mind initiates unwholesome thoughts, then the mind naturally becomes agitated. People think a lot, not because life is too complicated, but because the mind is not clear enough to see things lightly. Just as a calm water surface perfectly reflects the moon, but when stirred, even though the moon is in the sky, our eyes cannot see it. The human mind is the same. It inherently possesses the ability to be peaceful, clear, and light. It is only because we let unwholesome things infiltrate, causing the mind's current to become murky, that peace cannot remain for long. Therefore, the wise saints taught that to lessen excessive thinking, worries, and afflictions, one must first return to and reflect on cultivating the body, speech, and mind. That is the most fundamental foundation in all practices, and also the first door leading to true peace. In Buddhist teachings, there is a very simple yet profound practice. Whether one has studied Buddhism for many years or is new to the Dharma, anyone can start here. It is the 10 wholesome actions. The 10 wholesome actions are not something lofty or mysterious. They are simply 10 wholesome deeds that encompass the 3 actions of body, speech, and mind. By observing these 10 wholesome actions, we are cleansing the butt that clings to our mind. When the body is kept pure, the mind naturally becomes light. When speech is kept truthful, the mind naturally finds peace. When thoughts are kept wholesome, the mind naturally becomes bright. Therefore, the 10 wholesome actions are not just ethics, but also a method to transform karma and the mind, helping people quickly reduce suffering. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha once taught that all wholesome karma is the foundation of liberation. One cannot expect peace if even the smallest things, like not harming others, are not upheld. So, to reduce the storms within your heart, return to practicing the 10 wholesome actions little by little each day, bit by bit each hour. In this way, the mind will settle and peace will naturally find you. When the 10 wholesome actions are mentioned, many people think they are just 10 things to avoid evil. But to understand it that way is to see only half the surface. The 10 wholesome actions are actually a very miraculous path. When we stop an unwholesome act, at the same time we are opening up a wholesome one. When we stop killing, our compassion grows. When we stop stealing, the mind of contentment manifests. When we stop sexual misconduct, the mind becomes pure again. When we stop lying, the mind of truthfulness appears. When we stop divisive speech, loving kindness arises. When we stop harsh speech, gentleness manifests. When we stop idle talk, mindfulness shines forth. When we stop greed, the mind becomes calm and expansive. When we stop anger, the mind becomes gentle and cool. When we stop ignorance, wisdom illuminates the path. Therefore, the 10 wholesome actions are like 10 doors leading the mind back to its inherent peace. Let's try to see what an often angry person usually does. They speak many harsh words. Their eyes are irritated. Their steps are hurried. They cannot listen to anyone, cannot understand anyone, and cannot even understand themselves. They always feel that everything in life goes against their wishes. The mind of anger is like fire. Once it flares up, it burns the entire person's mind. But when one practices non-killing, non-harsh speech, and does not harbor harmful thoughts, the fire of anger naturally dwindles. A person with less anger thinks less. A person who thinks less suffers less. Similarly, a greedy person. Greed is not just taking from others. Greed can sometimes be excessive demands, wanting too much, being dissatisfied with what one has. A greedy mind prevents one from letting go, from feeling light. But when one cultivates wholesome karma concerning the mind, without greed, life becomes simple and light. A person with less greed is content, and being content means no worry, no fear. The mind is like a calm lake surface. Whatever scene comes, it can reflect. Whatever event comes, it can accept. That is also the root of lasting peace. Once, the Buddha asked his disciples why the human mind is not at peace, even though no one binds it. One monk replied that they are swayed by the world. Another replied that they are bothered by others. But the Buddha said the mind is not at peace because they do not keep themselves in wholesome dharma. The human mind is like a field. If good seeds are not sown, weeds grow on their own. If precepts are not observed, afflictions arise on their own. If the mind is not cultivated, unwholesome thoughts naturally find their way in. Therefore, the 10 wholesome actions are a fence protecting the mind from bad seeds. A person who knows how to keep the 10 wholesome actions finds their inner self becoming as calm as a glass of water that is not stirred, allowing all worldly dust to settle. Such a person lives lightly, speaks lightly, thinks lightly, and thus life naturally becomes serene. From the perspective of karma, the 10 wholesome actions bring about a very powerful transformation. One who kills sows the seeds of illness and fear. One who steals sows the seeds of poverty and unrest. One who engages in sexual misconduct sows the seeds of family breakdown. One who lies sows the seeds of being mistrusted. One who speaks harshly sows the seeds of loneliness. One who speaks divisively sows the seeds of discord. One who speaks uselessly sows the seeds of wasted time. One who is greedy sows the seeds of lack and poverty. One who is angry sows the seeds of easily encountering enemies. One who is deluded sows the seeds of error. Conversely, whoever practices the 10 wholesome actions will have wholesome and pleasant karma follow them, like a shadow. And that person will think less, fear less, and worry less. This is a very ordinary truth that anyone who practices will experience. To better understand the marvel of the 10 wholesome actions, there is an everyday story, very small, yet containing a great lesson. This story is about a boy named Duke. Duke was only a 6th grader, living in a small neighborhood. From childhood, he was a gentle, quiet, and somewhat shy child. His parents always told him that to be a person, one must first be honest. If you make a mistake, apologize. If you do well, don't boast. As long as you keep these 3 things, no one can fault you. One afternoon, after school, Duke's mother tasked him with taking out the trash to the end of the alley. On his way past Mrs. Two's house, a neighbor, he accidentally knocked over a precious porcelain plant pot that she had cherished for many years. The porcelain pot shattered, and soil spilled all over the walkway. Duke was terrified, his heart pounding. He knew Mrs. Tu valued that pot dearly, as it was a memento from her late husband. In that moment, the boy thought about running away, thinking that if he pretended not to know, perhaps no one would find out. He stood still for a moment, his heart tangled like thread, and unwholesome thoughts began to stir. But then he remembered his mother's words. His mother had once said that living honestly might not immediately help you avoid trouble, but it would certainly bring peace to your mind. When the mind is not afraid, the mind will be at peace. Duke swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and walked into Mrs. Tu's house. She was sitting in the living room, watching the news. Hearing a knock, she opened the door. Seeing the boy's pale face, she asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Duke bowed very low and stammered, "Mrs. Tu, I accidentally broke your porcelain pot. I'm so sorry. I'll try to save money to buy you another one." His whole body trembled, fearing a scolding. Mrs. Tu looked at him for a moment, her eyes showing no anger. She exhaled softly and placed her hand on his shoulder. She told him to look up and said she knew he didn't do it on purpose. And she also knew how difficult it was for him to come and admit his mistake. "You are a kind-hearted child. A broken plant pot can be replaced, but a heart that knows its mistakes and tries to correct them is not something everyone possesses. If you uphold that, you will fear nothing in your future life." At that very moment, Duke felt as if a heavy stone had been lifted from his chest. He sighed with relief and felt strangely light. On his way home, he smiled to himself. His mind was no longer troubled. When he recounted it to his mother, she simply patted his head and said, "When you keep your body, speech, and mind pure, everything in life becomes simple. There is nothing to fear, nothing to run from." The story, though seemingly small, shows us the miraculous power of living according to wholesome dharma. If the boy had lied, evaded, or hidden the truth at that moment, his mind would certainly have been heavy that night. He would have worried about Mrs. Tu finding out, and his thoughts would have been restless. A small matter, but it would have caused mental anguish. Conversely, by simply speaking the truth, by bravely admitting his fault, and by maintaining wholesome karma, he liberated himself. This is what the 10 wholesome actions bring. When wholesome karma is fully upheld, the mind is incredibly light. A person who maintains a wholesome mind will not fear the truth. A person who maintains wholesome speech will not fear slander. A person who maintains wholesome bodily actions will not fear consequences. That is why it is said that if you keep your body, speech, and mind pure, life will naturally be at peace. It is worth noting that the 10 wholesome actions are not something that needs to be forced or feigned. They are a return to the inherent purity of each person. One does not need to be extremely talented, wealthy, or powerful to live virtuously. If only they desire peace of mind, wish to reduce excessive thinking, and lessen worry, then the 10 wholesome actions are a sufficient foundation. And it is precisely by observing these 10 wholesome deeds that we do not create more bad karma, nor sow more unwholesome seeds. The law of karma operates very fairly. Nothing escapes it. A person who knows how to maintain wholesome karma will find life more stable, their mind less agitated, and everything lighter. Many people often ask how to think less, how to keep the mind from wandering aimlessly, how to easily forget others' faults while remembering one's own. The Buddha taught that when the mind is directed towards wholesome dharma, unwholesome thoughts have no place to reside. It's like in a dark room. Just light a lamp, and the darkness naturally recedes. The human mind is the same. If we just uphold a few wholesome deeds, the winds of worry, thoughts, impurities, and afflictions will gradually dissipate. In practice, a practitioner can use daily contemplation to prevent the mind from falling into the 3 unwholesome actions. When preparing to do something, ask yourself, is this beneficial for anyone? When preparing to say something, ask yourself, will these words cause anyone pain? When preparing to think about something, ask yourself, will this thought make my mind uneasy? Pausing for a moment to reflect like this is also practice. A person who knows how to look within before acting has already traveled far on the path of transformation. Every morning upon waking, silently remind yourself, today I will try not to harm anyone, not to say anything that hurts anyone, and not to think anything that makes the mind unwholesome. If you can do it for one day, your mind is at peace for one day. If you can do it for 1 week, your mind is at peace for 1 week. When it becomes a habit, excessive thinking significantly diminishes because you no longer sow seeds that cause yourself fear. The 10 wholesome actions may seem simple, but they possess profound power, like a pine tree standing firm in a strong wind. One who lives virtuously stands firm amidst the storms of life. Some say that the world is too complicated, and keeping the 10 wholesome deeds is impossible. But in reality, the 10 wholesome actions are a practice for everyone. You don't need to be ordained. You don't need advanced Buddhist knowledge. Just a heart that desires to live peacefully is enough to begin. When you stop harming others, that is practice. When you speak truthfully without deceit, that is practice. When you do not let greed guide you, that is practice. Each wholesome deed contributes to making the mind brighter and life lighter. That is why, in the scriptures, the Buddha once said that one who practices the 10 wholesome actions is walking on the right path. This path is so simple that anyone can step onto it, and so miraculous that everyone who steps onto it changes. Looking back at the story of young Duke, we see that just one small act was enough to prove that a pure body, speech, and mind are the lamp of the heart. It illuminates every step we take, preventing us from stumbling into the darkness of fear. One who upholds the 10 wholesome actions does not need to have great merit, yet their mind is always light. One who does not uphold them, no matter how great their achievements, their mind remains heavy due to the fear of bad things following. It's like a shadow. If the sun is behind you, the shadow goes before you. If you do wrong, the shadow of karma is always in front of you. Wherever you go, you encounter it. But when the sun is in front of you, the shadow recedes behind. When wholesome deeds are before your mind, unwholesome karma gradually recedes behind. This lesson is simple, yet many forget it, so afflictions persist. When we understand the 10 wholesome deeds and their transformative power, we realize that to lessen excessive thinking is not to forcefully eliminate thoughts, but to purify the mind so that thoughts naturally settle. Like muddy water, the more you stir it, the murkier it gets. Just leave it alone, and the sediment will sink. The human mind is the same. When one lives virtuously, the mind naturally becomes peaceful. When the mind is peaceful, life naturally finds peace. The 10 wholesome actions are precisely the method that helps one maintain the root of inner purity. Whenever you feel tired, despondent, or anxious, ask yourself, have I fully upheld the 3 actions today? If not, that is the cause of your troubled mind. If you have upheld them, but your mind is still worried, then old karma is dissolving. The dissolution of old karma always comes with a bit of unease. Just persist until your wholesome karma is strong enough, and bad karma will dissolve completely, and your mind will be as peaceful as the autumn moon. Finally, the greatest lesson from the 10 wholesome actions is the return to humanity's inherent gentle nature. When the body does no wrong, speech speaks no wrong, and the mind thinks no wrong, we do not have to run from anything. A person living this way feels light wherever they go, light when they lie down, light when they stand up, and every breath is light. That is the state of true peace, a peace that does not come from the outside, but from one's own purity. When the 10 wholesome actions are upheld, the mind naturally becomes less angry, because it no longer nurtures the seeds of hot temper. When the 10 wholesome actions are upheld, the mind naturally worries less, because it no longer fears unwholesome karma. When the 10 wholesome actions are upheld, the mind naturally thinks less, because there is nothing left to run from or hide. When the 10 wholesome actions are upheld, karma naturally lessens, because we do not continue to sow more bad seeds. All of this leads to a very simple point. Keep your body, speech, and mind pure, and life will naturally be at peace. In modern life, people are often accustomed to a pace faster than the mind's capacity to endure. Work pushes, deadlines abound, messages flood in, schedules are packed, days fly by like a runaway train. People rush so much they forget why they're living. Many walk without their minds ever being truly present with their steps, eat without knowing what they are putting into their bodies, speak without feeling the sounds they are making. They love yet remain distant. They're close, yet their hearts are separated. This is because the mind is entirely focused on the future, or worried about things that haven't happened yet. This very speed makes the mind easily agitated. A normal remark can make one irritable. A small mishap can make one confused. Just a slight disagreement with someone's wishes, and the mind flares up like fire meeting wind. People lose their roots, their inner foundation, and gradually become leaves blown by the winds of life. Therefore, the Buddha taught that the root of affliction does not lie in external events, but in the mind's failure to be fully present in this very moment. When the mind is not aware, it will chase after delusive thoughts, getting caught in the vortex of worry. When the mind does not live slowly, it loses the ability to look deeply into the nature of things. Therefore, to lessen excessive thinking, one must first learn to live slowly, live meditatively, returning to each breath and each step. In truth, humans are not born rushed. A child knows how to live more slowly than we think. They eat each bite, observe each detail, touch each object. They observe the world with pure curiosity, without calculation or comparison. It's just that as we grow up, we are taught to be faster to keep up with life. We forget that faster is not necessarily wiser. Rushing without mindfulness is precisely cultivating ignorance. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught that by merely having mindfulness in the smallest actions, the mind naturally becomes calm. A person who can walk slowly, breathe deeply, and observe themselves is cultivating wisdom. In contrast, one who chases after external speed pays the price with inner turmoil. Therefore, living slowly is not laziness. Living slowly is not abandoning life. Living slowly is returning to the natural rhythm of body and mind. Just as a lake surface only reflects the sky when the water is not stirred, the mind only clearly sees the truth when it is no longer swept away by the speed of delusive thoughts. One day, a young novice asked the Buddha, "Why is my mind always restless, even though I try to practice?" The Buddha asked in return, "When you hold a cup of water and continuously shake it, can your reflection appear clearly?" The novice replied that it could not. The Buddha taught that the human mind is also like a cup of water. If it is constantly agitated by thoughts, by worries, by desires, by struggles, how can it reflect the truth? Only when one knows how to stop, how to relax, how to live slowly, does the mind become clear. This teaching seems simple, yet many people never manage to practice it their entire lives because they fear that slowing down will mean being left behind, losing out, or not achieving what they want. But that is just the illusion of craving. Slowing down does not make us lose anything. Slowing down only makes us see ourselves more clearly. And sometimes, just seeing clearly makes suffering disappear. One who knows how to live slowly will begin with the breath. The Buddha taught that the breath is the thread connecting body and mind. Breathing in deeply brings the body to a single point. Breathing out long brings the mind to a single point. When body and mind are unified, we are truly present in the moment. At that time, all agitation seems to be put down. A worried person, just by sitting and taking 3 deep breaths, will already feel different, because deep breathing calms the nervous system. Long breaths help us release the tension in our minds. Ancient farmers, when plowing fields, also knew to stop and breathe, because they understood that when the mind is tense, the hands will tremble, and the plow will veer off course. Modern people just work without knowing when to stop, which is why they stray so much from their path. When we take a deep breath, we are reminding our mind to return. The breath is the Dharma gate of returning. No need for gongs or rituals, just knowing that the breath is coming in and going out. The mind immediately finds a refuge. The second way to live slowly is to practice walking meditation. Walking meditation is not about walking sluggishly or walking to appear meditative. Walking meditation is placing the mind in each step, lifting a foot, knowing you are lifting it, placing a foot down, knowing you are placing it. A worried person, just by walking meditation for 10 minutes, will find their mind much calmer. Because when the mind is placed in each step, it no longer races to the future or drags itself to the past. One who practices walking meditation will find familiar paths becoming new, fallen leaves becoming beautiful, bird calls becoming clearer, countless things that were always there but were obscured by the hurried mind. Each step of walking meditation is a declaration that we are truly living our life. In the Lotus Sutra, there is a passage that says that one who knows how to return to oneself is walking on the path of lotus flowers. Walking meditation is the path that brings us back to the peace inherently present in our mind. Another method to calm the mind is mindful eating. Many people eat as if they are escaping something. They eat while checking their phones, eat while discussing work, eat while arguing, eat while thinking about old things. The body puts food into the mouth, but the mind wanders everywhere. Therefore, they never truly feel the nourishment in each bite. Some say that every meal for them is just a procedure. It's only when they fall ill, and the doctor tells them to adjust their lifestyle, that they are startled. Mindful eating means putting one's entire mind into each bite, sensing the sweet, salty, fragrant, and warm flavors. Eat as if it's the first time and also potentially the last. A mindful eater will see that food is a gift from heaven and earth, a gift from the farmer, a gift from life. When we appreciate each bite, we will appreciate life more, and the mind will lessen craving, anger, and desires. Because gratitude is the most potent medicine for the mind's agitation. There is a beautiful story about slow living and mindfulness in everyday life. It is the story of Ms. Me, a marketing employee who always lived at the speed of her work. Every day, she started by opening her phone before opening her eyes. Every meal was rushed. If someone asked her what she ate that day, she couldn't even remember. Until one day, she visited her mother. Her mother cooked a simple meal: braised fish, boiled vegetables, and a bowl of soup. As she was about to sit down at the dining table, she intended to open her phone to quickly reply to messages, but for some reason, she put it aside. Perhaps it was because she saw her mother looking at her with gentle eyes, or perhaps her heart suddenly desired to rest. She began to eat slowly. For the first time in a very long time, she tasted the flavor of the braised fish. She smelled the aroma of the boiled vegetables. She heard the gentle clink of her spoon against the bowl. Each small sound softened her heart. While eating, her mother told a tiny story about a neighbor. Just a story about a tree in the backyard that was leaning due to the wind. Yet, just hearing it made her heart feel a pang. She suddenly realized how long it had been since she had sat and eaten slowly with her mother. She also realized that her mother had grown much older, her hair grayer, her hands thinner, and her voice slower than before. That meal had no phone ringing, but it had the gentle call of mindfulness. She understood that she had missed countless precious moments simply by living too fast. And she understood that living slowly means seeing what you have before it is gone. That was a lesson that no book could have taught her as profoundly as this small moment. From Ms. Mai's story, we see that living slowly is not about abandoning everything to go into the mountains. Living slowly is not about changing one's job or external lifestyle. Living slowly begins with turning inward. The Buddha taught that if the mind is fully present, even if living in a marketplace, one lives as if in a meditation hall. But if the mind is not mindful, even in a temple, one remains agitated, as if standing in a crowded market. Living slowly is the practice of returning to oneself through breath, steps, meals, and even the moments we share with loved ones. When we slow down, we realize how much we have neglected. A thank you left unsaid, a hug never given, an incomplete meal, a morning never spent watching the sunrise, an evening never spent sitting still. Living slowly helps us open our eyes to life with a new perspective. Every small thing becomes a gift. Every moment has value. If you want to live more slowly, the Buddha taught to practice non-judgment. A judgmental mind is a fast mind. A judgmental mind reacts immediately to everything. If someone says something we don't like, we immediately think ill of them. If a small incident occurs, we quickly blame others. If bad news appears, we quickly feel fear. A judgmental mind exhausts the mind more than any work, because each time we judge, we deplete energy. Judgment is also a form of delusive thinking that keeps the mind from ever resting. A person who knows how to live slowly will learn to see things as they are, without labeling, without praising, without criticizing, without adding color, without removing shades, just seeing and knowing that it is present. When we no longer judge, the mind becomes light as a cloud. When we learn this, peace will lift us up like the wind lifts a kite. Another important aspect of slow living is knowing how to observe emotions instead of fighting them. People tend to suppress sadness, avoid fear, and stifle anger. When an unpleasant emotion arises, we often want it to disappear immediately. But the more we suppress it, the stronger it becomes. The more we fight it, the more fiercely it returns. The Buddha taught that emotions are merely guests visiting. They come and go, arise and disappear, like clouds passing through the sky. The sky never fights the clouds. The sky simply allows the clouds to pass. A mindful mind is the same. When sad, know that you are sad. When angry, know that you are angry. When worried, know that you are worried. Just knowing allows the emotion to soften. Observation helps us not to identify with emotions. We no longer say, "I am sadness," or "I am anger." We simply know that sadness is passing through me, and I am not it. A person who knows how to observe emotions has already taken half a step toward inner freedom, because freedom is not the absence of emotions, but knowing that one is not controlled by emotions. When we know how to live slowly, breathe deeply, eat mindfully, walk peacefully, and refrain from judgment, our mind will no longer be agitated as before. The things that once worried us will also become lighter. People who live slowly do so, not because they have nothing left to do, but because they know that rushing solves nothing. Like a rower, if the current is swift, they must slow down to maintain balance. The mind is the same. When life is full of turbulence, we need to pause to maintain inner stability. We understand that living slowly is a practice, a simple yet profoundly deep practice. It doesn't require hours of chanting nor complex rituals. It only requires a hand that knows how to put down the phone, a deep breath, a complete meal, a mindful step, a heartfelt moment of looking at the people we love. Living slowly is seeing clearly that happiness lies in small things, and that when the mind thinks less, life naturally becomes peaceful and full of meaning. The Buddha once taught that one who knows how to return to the present holds the key to liberation in their hand. So, let us live a little slower to find life many times gentler. In this life, there is a very familiar suffering that almost everyone carries with them, the suffering caused by others' words, attitudes, and behavior. We often easily get angry when someone says something we don't like. We easily get sad when someone doesn't agree with us. We easily become jealous when we see someone more capable or successful. We easily become contemptuous when we see someone inferior or clumsy compared to us. These reactions seem very normal, but they are the root cause of excessive thinking and unending mental exhaustion. Living life such that just one disagreeable word stirs up the heart, how many days of peace will there be in life? Therefore, the Buddha once taught that most of the suffering of sentient beings begins with an overly large ego. When the ego is touched, anger immediately flares up. When the ego is hurt, sadness lingers. When the ego is threatened, jealousy appears. The ego is like a fire. The more it is fanned, the more it blazes. The more it is nurtured, the hotter it gets. The more it is clung to, the more it burns oneself before it burns anyone else. Some people say they suffer because others treat them badly. But the truth is that others can only touch us when we allow them to touch our ego. If we are empty and light within, praise and criticism are like wind blowing across a lake, creating a few ripples, then settling back to calm. But if we are full of ego clinging inside, even a gentle word can agitate the mind all day. Therefore, what exhausts us is not what others say, but our own inner ego being too sensitive, too desirous for everyone to agree with us. A person with inner strength will not allow their emotions to be swayed by external factors. They know that what someone says is their business, but whether we get sad or not is our own business. When we understand this, countless afflictions diminish. Once, a disciple asked the Buddha, "Why am I so easily saddened just because others don't think of me as I wish?" The Buddha replied, "When you carry a heavy sack of grain on your shoulder, even a slight touch from someone causes you pain. But when your shoulder is empty, no one can hurt you by touching it." Your ego is like that sack of grain. The heavier it is, the more easily you get hurt. Therefore, if you want to be less hurt by life, be gentle with your ego. Don't cling to it too much. Don't consider it everything. Don't let it dictate your emotions. When we cling less, life immediately lightens. When we stop thinking of ourselves as the center of everything, the mind becomes open and expansive. Just like water. If it insists on being the highest, the strongest, it will fall like a cascade, unable to reflect the moon. But when water knows stillness, the moon naturally appears. The human mind is the same. To see the truth of life, one must first let the mind settle by letting go of the ego. But letting go of the ego is not easy. We are accustomed to living by comparison. If someone is on par with us, we want to be better. If someone is better than us, we envy. If someone is worse than us, we look down on them. These comparisons make us slaves to our emotions. Every day, we have to live in tension, worrying about what others think, say, and evaluate about us. We turn ourselves into shadows of others, forgetting that true happiness never lies in the opinions of others. Happiness lies in the lightness we give to ourselves. Among countless everyday stories illustrating the lesson of letting go of the ego, there is a very simple yet profound story about Mrs. Tu and her neighbor, Ms. Hang. The story seems small upon hearing it, but upon reflection, it contains a great practice that anyone can learn. Mrs. Tu was a gentle woman who lived simply, taking care of her household, her husband, and children every day, and maintaining traditional customs. In the neighborhood, there was Ms. Hang, who was very observant of everything. She often looked over at Mrs. Tu's house and made various remarks. Sometimes she criticized Mrs. Tu's house for being messy. Other times she said Mrs. Tu didn't cook properly. Sometimes it was just a casual comment. But her way of speaking easily hurt people. Initially, every time Mrs. Hang criticized her, Mrs. Tu felt sad. She felt self-pity because she had done nothing wrong yet was still scrutinized. She felt indignant at why others liked to nitpick her private matters so much. Some afternoons, she would sit in a daze for hours just because of one ill-intentioned remark. Her mind at that time was like the surface of a pond with a stone thrown into it, churning all day without peace. Until one day, Mrs. Tu heard a Dharma talk by the abbot of the nearby temple. The abbot said that if we allow another person's words to make us sad, it is no different than giving our mind to that person to hold. The speaker finishes their words and moves on, but the listener carries the suffering all day. The speaker only loses a breath, but the listener loses their entire peace. Hearing this, Mrs. Tu was startled. She realized that all this time, it wasn't Ms. Hang who made her sad, but she herself made herself sad by clinging too much to her ego. She clung to the idea that others must speak pleasant words. She clung to the idea that everyone must treat her correctly. She clung to the idea that others had no right to judge her. In reality, what someone chooses to say is their right, but whether we get sad or not is our own right. From that day on, she began to change. Every time she heard Ms. Hang say something critical, she still smiled. Sometimes Ms. Hang would say that her house was a bit noisy, and Mrs. Tu would simply reply, "What you say is your business. Whether I am sad or not is my business." That statement stunned Ms. Hang. She never expected Mrs. Tu could be so calm. Mrs. Tu maintained her inner peace. The more Ms. Hang spoke, the lighter Mrs. Tu became. And that very lightness gradually caused Ms. Hang to change. She reflected on herself and reduced her habit of nitpicking. As for Mrs. Tu, she lived healthier than before. She no longer let others' words control her emotions. She understood a truth. If we do not cling, no one can make us suffer. This story clearly shows us one thing. Being sad or not sad is a choice. Clinging or not clinging is a choice. Our emotions are not in the hands of others. They are in our hands. If we hand the key to our peace to others to hold, then as long as they are unhappy, we will suffer. But if we keep that key with us, whatever anyone says cannot make us lose our balance. In the Dhammapada, there is a saying that no one can make us suffer as much as our own uncultivated mind. In everyday life, people often say that when we let go of the ego, we let go of 100 afflictions. Indeed, the larger the ego, the more afflictions. The lighter the ego, the easier joy is found. To lessen excessive thinking, the first thing to do is not to change others, but to change ourselves. We must learn to look at life with broader eyes. We must learn to look at people with more loving kindness. We must learn to let go of unnecessary things that occupy space in our minds. To do that, we must first learn to identify the ego in every small reaction. When someone says something you don't like and you get angry, ask yourself, what is my mind clinging to? When someone doesn't agree with you and you get sad, look to see how much you wish they were like you. When someone is better than you and you feel jealous, contemplate what is lacking in your heart that prevents you from rejoicing in others' success. When someone is inferior to you and you feel contempt, reconsider where your ego is inflating from. Each time you contemplate in this way, you are gradually diminishing the inner ego. And when the ego shrinks, the mind becomes as vast as the sky. Another practice is to learn patience and forbearance, like the earth. The earth does not complain when people step on it. The earth does not get angry when people make it dirty. The earth does not rejoice when people praise it, nor does it grieve when people criticize it. The earth simply quietly fulfills its role. If the human mind is trained to be like the earth, whatever anyone says will not make us waver. Forbearance is not enduring suffering, but compassion. It is knowing that the person who speaks unpleasant words is also suffering. They suffer, so they need to speak out. They are empty, so they need to express themselves. They are weak, so they attack. Seeing this, we lessen our anger and increase our compassion. One who knows how to let go of the ego also knows how to see everything through the lens of karma. In the Agama Sutras, it is said, "Everything we encounter in life has its causes and conditions. Someone speaks ill of us because in the past we lacked loving kindness toward them. Someone envies us because we inadvertently hurt them. Nothing is accidental." Knowing this, instead of reacting, we contemplate and cultivate our own minds. We know that encountering anyone or hearing anything is an opportunity to practice. Those who make us happy teach us gratitude. Those who make us sad teach us patience. Those who hurt us teach us to grow. Life is a great Dharma hall, and the people around us are special teachers. To let go of the ego, we also need to learn to return to the breath, as mentioned in the previous section. Every time you get angry, breathe in deeply, knowing that you are hot. Breathe out slowly, knowing that you are letting go. Every time you are sad, sit still and let your breath soothe your mind. Each breath is a rhythm that purifies the ego. One who knows how to breathe knows how to live. One who knows how to breathe knows how to put themselves in their rightful place. When the breath is light, the mind will be light. When the mind is light, life will be at peace. And finally, letting go of the ego means reminding ourselves that no one in this life is perfect. Others can make mistakes, and we too have made mistakes. Others may sometimes make us sad, and we too have caused pain to others countless times. Everyone is trying to live their own way. Everyone has their own story that we don't fully know. Therefore, let us live more kindly with each other. Let us speak gentler words. Let us look at people with more compassionate eyes. That is the best way for the mind to stop thinking too much and for life to become lighter. The worldly matters, and people we cling to actually only make us more tired. Letting go is not losing. It is winning. Winning over oneself. Winning over the ego. Winning over the heaviness in the mind. When the ego is let go, no words can shake us. No gaze can hurt us. No one can take away the peace that inherently belongs to us. The Buddha once taught that one who does not cling is a free person. And only when we are free from the ego can the mind stop thinking excessively, for life to be truly peaceful and happy. There are times, sitting amidst this chaotic life, when we suddenly realize that for so many years we have been searching for peace in too many places. Yet we forgot a simple truth. What we truly need is not found in external things. People often think that peace means things go their way, that life is gentle as they wish, that everyone loves and understands them. But according to the Buddha's teachings, peace comes from within. When the mind agrees to stop, life becomes still. When the mind knows how to return, life begins to find peace. Therefore, no matter how many parts of today's Dharma talk we have gone through, we always return to one ultimate point. When the mind is at peace, life is at peace. Throughout a person's life journey, thoughts are what tire us more than any work. Every worry that arises pulls along another chain of thoughts. That is why the Buddha said that the root of suffering is not in circumstances, but in the mind filled with delusive thoughts. When we know how to think less and let go of unnecessary things, suffering immediately lightens. An empty mind makes room for wholesome things to blossom. Just as a lake surface only reflects the moon when the wind stops, the mind only sees its inherent happiness, which is right before it, when it ceases its agitation. The journey to reduce excessive thinking actually begins with compassion for oneself and for others. One who lives with loving kindness naturally becomes gentle. One who knows how to love naturally lessens resentment. Compassion is not something profound, but simply a gentler way of looking at the world. People who speak wrongly do so not necessarily to hurt us, but because they are suffering, which then causes us to suffer. People who behave badly are also trapped by their own anger. When we understand that, we no longer respond with resentment. We choose to put gentleness first. Thanks to this, life becomes easier to breathe. Compassion is an important foundation. Whenever we wish to heal our minds, if we contemplate deeper, we will see that peace also comes from being mindful of impermanence. Human life changes very quickly. Something we consider a problem today, when we look back at another time, we realize it wasn't significant enough to make us so sad. Someone we once resented, perhaps later, there will be no chance to say, "I forgive you." An event that once hurt us ultimately becomes something that helps us grow. Impermanence itself makes us understand that everything will eventually pass. Therefore, we learn to cherish what we have. We learn to treat those around us gently. We learn to slow down so as not to waste our lives in useless anger. Karma is a truth that those on the path of practice cannot forget. The Buddha said that whatever seed you sow, that is the fruit you will reap. We cannot expect peace if every day we sow seeds of irritation, anger, and selfishness, just as we cannot expect happiness if our hearts are full of calculations and competition. Karma does not require us to believe in it to operate. It operates every minute, every second, in everything we do. A wholesome word can open up blessings. An unwholesome thought can create unwholesome karma for us later. When we understand this, we will know how to live more righteously. We will no longer dare to waste our time on useless things, and will no longer live recklessly according to momentary emotions. Karma helps us be mindful. Karma helps us adjust each step we take. Throughout the previous sections, we have heard about the 10 wholesome actions, and know that this is the foundation of a healthy life.